you please be seated? We're going to start in just a moment. This is a great time to remind you, though, that if you have your cell phone with you, and you probably do, we need you to silence it, please. Thank you.
These things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of my heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of my heart.
Thank you, Cantor Newman, for your lovely rendition of Eli Eli. You set the tone for today's commemoration. I am Leo Kleiner, the son of Michael and Molly Kleiner of blessed memory, who are both Holocaust survivors, and I am privileged to co-chair this year's Yom HaShoah commemoration with my dear friend Felicia Miller. It is an honor to be together with everyone, and we welcome all of you, whether you are joining us in person or virtually. Today, we remember the 6 million Jews murdered during the Shoah, as well as Holocaust survivors. Yom HaShoah begins our season of Yamim, 3 national Israeli holidays that include Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut. The 27th of the Hebrew month of Nisan was chosen as the date of Yom HaShoah because it is the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising on the Hebrew calendar. You can learn more about the uprising using the QR code in your program. Moments like this one during the Holocaust show the strength and resilience of the Jewish people to endure against thousands of years of oppression and hatred and build a brighter Jewish future. An estimated 1/3 of Israeli soldiers killed during Israel's War of Independence in 1948 were Holocaust survivors. Many were the last of their family, yet they still chose to fight for the future of the Jewish people. We must remember that Yom HaShoah is both a remembrance and a pledge, a promise to continue fighting for our Jewish identity, past, present, and future.
This annual commemoration is possible because of a long-standing partnership among the Nathan and Esther Peltz Holocaust Education Resource Center, the Milwaukee Jewish Federation, and the Harry and Rose Samson Family Jewish Community Center. Leo and I would like to thank the Yom HaShoah Committee and the professional staff from all three of these organizations. With thoughtful input from the committee members, we are proud to once again come together as a community to affirm our Jewish identity, remember those who were murdered, and honor the resilience of Holocaust survivors. We are blessed to have a survivor community in Milwaukee, and we grieve for the survivors who passed away since our last commemoration. In their memories and in the memory of the 6 million, we stop and mourn. I would now like to welcome Rabbi David Cohn of Congregation Sinai to offer our opening prayer.
Prayer for Yom HaShoah, composed by Chief Rabbi of Great Britain, Lord Jonathan Sacks, Alav HaShalom. Today on Yom HaShoah, we remember the victims of the greatest crime of humanity, the young, the old, the innocent, the 1.5 million children, starved, shot, given lethal injections, gassed, burned and turned to ash because they were deemed guilty of the crime of being different. We remember what happens when hate takes hold of the human heart and turns it to stone. What happens when victims cry for help and there's no one listening. What happens when humanity fails to recognize that those who are not in our image are nonetheless in God's image. We remember and give thanks for the righteous of the nations who saved lives, often at the risk of their own, teaching us how in the darkest night we can light a candle of hope. Today on Yom HaShoah, we call upon you, Almighty God, to help us hear your voice that says in every generation, do not murder, do not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor, do not oppress the stranger. We know that whilst we do not have the ability to change the past, we can change the future. We know that whilst we cannot bring the dead back to life, we can ensure their memories live on and that their deaths were not in vain. And so on this Yom HaShoah, we commit ourselves to one simple act, Yizkor, remember. May the souls of the victims be bound up in the bond of eternal life. And together we say, Amen.
Good evening. My name is Sam Goldberg. I'm the Education Director at the Nathan and Esther Peltz Holocaust Education Resource Center. I'm going to be introducing today's candle lighting. Members of our survivor community will each kindle a memorial candle in memory of their family members and the collective 6 million Jews murdered during the Shoah. This symbolizes that every victim of the Shoah has a name and their own personal identity. in their own personal history. Teen leaders in Milwaukee's Jewish community, including Joey Arnstein, Asa Stiller, Sam Figus, and Elliot Littman, will read the biographies of each candlelighter. As representatives of Milwaukee's vibrant Jewish future, we are honored and grateful that you've taken this important role. I'd also like to note that some of the participating teens are the descendants of Holocaust survivors themselves. This is living proof that the legacy and memory of Milwaukee's Holocaust survivors continues to be felt by each succeeding generation. I'd like to introduce or welcome our first candlelighter.
Al Better was born in Kovno, Lithuania in 1928. He was away at summer camp when the Nazis invaded Lithuania. Albert was deported to labor and concentration camps where his father died and he saw his mother and two of his sisters for the last time. In 1945, he was forced on a death march that lasted for 10 days. In May 1945, Albert was liberated by American troops. He later came to Milwaukee and served in the U.S. Army. After his service, Albert returned to Milwaukee and built a new life with his wife, Ruth. Today, we also remember Al's lifelong friend, Howard Melton, who survived the Holocaust with him. They shared their story together in Milwaukee classrooms. Al has 4 children, 7 grandchildren, and 9 great-grandchildren.
Edith Herzenson's Pump's parents were forced to flee their homeland of Poland after the Nazis invaded on September 1st, 1939. She was born while her parents were hiding in Uzbekistan, then a part of the Soviet Union, where harsh living conditions made it difficult to raise a child. Edith and her parents were the only family members to survive. After the war, she and her parents were transported to a DP camp in Germany. Edith and her parents came to the United States in 1951. Edith became a Milwaukee public school teacher, educating the next generation of leaders and calling out anti-Semitism when she encountered it here in America. Edith is the mother of 3 children. Werner Rickheimer was born in Karlsruhe, Germany in 1937, 4 years after the Nazis came to power. The Nazis deported Werner and his family to France, where they were imprisoned for 3 years in concentration camps. Through the dedication of relatives in Switzerland and the underground, Werner and his sister escaped to Switzerland, and in 1947, Werner and his sister came to Milwaukee, where their aunt and uncle raised them with much love. Werner served in the U.S. Army and had a career practicing dentistry. He taught his children and grandchildren to remember and honor their Jewish heritage. With his loving wife, Carol, Werner has 4 children, 12 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren.
Eva Zeret, born Eva Klein in Budapest, Hungary in 1936, is a survivor of the Budapest ghetto. After the Holocaust, Eva regained her health in the Carpathian Mountains with her family. During the post-war period, Eva and her husband and daughter were in Budapest when the Hungarian Revolution began, from which she, her first husband, and child escaped on foot. Via Austria, Eva and her family immigrated to the United States in 1957 and later settled in Milwaukee, where she later married Melvin Zeret and became a pillar of strength and Jewish vibrancy for our community. Eva has 2 children, 4 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren.
Peter Jacobson and his parents are from Bremen, Germany. They immigrated to the United States in 1938, shortly before Kristallnacht. After living in New York City for 10 years, they came to Milwaukee where they became active in the German Jewish community. Peter's father served for many years as president of the New Home Club, a social organization that also met the needs of many who fled European oppression and persecution. Peter became a dental surgeon and practiced for many years. With his loving wife, Jean, Peter has 2 children and 4 grandchildren.
Michael and Stephen Rusick light this candle in honor of their parents, Dora and Shimon. Born in Grodno and Kovel, Poland, both endured the Shoah's devastation. Dora, the sole survivor of her family, was imprisoned in the Grodno ghetto and deported to Auschwitz-Birkenau in January 1943, before her 1945 liberation by the U.S. Army and Germany. Shimon escaped to Soviet Asia and survived severe wounds while serving in the Soviet Army. They met and married in Kovel and escaped with the Bricha to the U.S. zone in 1946. In 1949, they immigrated to the USA with Michael. Shimon and Dora had 3 children, 9 grandchildren, and 7 great-grandchildren.
If capable, will all the survivors in the audience please stand? Will all the children of survivors in the audience please stand? Will all descendants of survivors in the audience please stand? Let their presence be a testimony to the life and the survival of the Jewish people. Please be seated. It is now my honor to call upon Jeffrey Gingold from our community to share a family reflection. Following Jeffrey, Noah Rickheimer, the grandson of Holocaust survivor Werner Rickheimer, will share his family reflection.
For my grandparents, raising a family in 1939 Warsaw was unimaginably brutal. On the day my grandmother went into labor with her 2nd child, the Germans bombed the city and leveled the hospital. Trapped in the Warsaw ghetto, food was initially sparse, then non-existent. Her efforts to nurse an infant magnified their desperation. Surviving the next year and eventually escaping the Warsaw ghetto through hand-dug tunnels was miraculous. My father was 8 years old at the time of their escape. Hiding from the Gestapo in the winter forests of Eastern Europe exacerbated their gut-churning hunger. From the edge of the woods, they occasionally spied a frozen and snowless farm field. Before anyone woke in the farmhouse, young Sam sprinted into the field towards any green stem. These stems were left standing in the soil. His frozen fingers and nails scraped at the icy dirt, revealing an icy food bit ignored. A raw morsel of dirt-crusted beet was a treat to be shared with his concealed family. Surviving the harsh winter of 1941 was visceral and not guaranteed. In 1973, our family gathered for our first Passover since my bar mitzvah. My grandfather chanted from the Haggadah. My father explained the clear instruction: we must remember and act as if we were the liberated slaves from Egypt. He told me. For me, Passover was grasping how fortunate we are to be here. The words of the Haggadah being read by family survivors of the Shoah swirled in my head. It led me to one conclusion regarding our pledge to remember the Exodus, we should also recall the Shoah with the same reverence as if we survived and were liberated from a Nazi-controlled ghetto or concentration camp. It was now personal for me. Remember it as if you were there. Remember it and pass it on.
My name is Noah Rickheimer, and my grandfather, Werner Rickheimer, is a Holocaust survivor. He has told his story of survival to hundreds of students, and today I would like to tell you what he means to me. In my 20 years of life, I have yet to see my grandpa without a smile. Even now, as a student at Tulane University, I can feel his joy when we speak on the phone. His personality radiates love for everything and everyone around him. In every aspect of my grandfather's life, he spreads love. He has had a very successful career as a dentist, and he's a model train enthusiast, a husband, father of 4, grandfather of 12, and great-grandfather of 4. Although he lived through the horrific events of the Holocaust, this past does not define him. Rather, he is defined by the life he created for himself and for his family in Milwaukee. This is an inspiration for me, my family, and anyone who has met him. I am here today because he did not give up hope. This family legacy has taught me many things. As the grandson of a survivor, I am always reminded of how important family and this Jewish community are. Family is everything, and this extends to my Jewish community. My grandfather taught me to find the positive things in life and how to hold on to them. He also taught me to find a Jewish community and appreciate every second with them. My grandfather has given me a reason to love everything around me, and I am honored to speak about him today.
One central component of Yom HaShoah is to commemorate Jews who fought as partisans against the Nazis and their collaborators. While the ability to resist depended on many factors, it is important that we remember this crucial aspect of the Jewish experience during the Holocaust. The Partisan song was written by Hirsch Glick, a Jewish poet and partisan who was imprisoned in the Vilna ghetto. When Glick learned about the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, he wrote the lyrics and paired it with the pre-war music composed by the Soviet Jewish musician Dmitry Pokras. Although Glick did not survive the Holocaust, his song gave hope to Jews as it clandestinely spread to concentration camps, ghettos, and partisan units in Eastern Europe. Today, it stands as proof that Jews did resist when they had the chance, and by singing it here today, we honor the partisans and keep their memory alive. If you are able, please stand and join me in singing the Partisan song. Sag nicht einmal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg, Gott Himmel bleiene, verstelle bleie Tag. Kommen weht noch unser ausgebänkte Schau, se weht abheugt von unser Trott mir seinen da. Kommen weht noch unser ausgebänkte Schau, se weht abheugt von unser Trott mir seinen da. Von grünen Palmenland bis weißen Land von Schnee, wir kommen an mit unser Pein, mit unser Weh. Und wo gefallen sie, so spritzt von unser Blut. Sprotzen wett und unser Gwure, unser Mut. Und wo gefallen sie, so spritzt von unser Blut. Sprotzen wett und unser Gwure, unser Mut. Sie wett die Morgensonn begilden uns dem Heind. Und der Nächten war verschwinden mit dem Feind, nur heut versammen weht die Sonne in dem Kajor. Wie a Paroso gehen das Lied von Dor zu Dor, nur heut versammen weht die Sonne in dem Kajor. Wie a Paroso gehen das Lied von Dor zu Dor. Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut und nicht mit Blei. Es ist nicht kein Lied von a Folge auf der Frei. Das hat a Volk zwischen fallen dicke Wend. Das Lied gesungen mit ner Ganes in die Hand. Das hat a Volk zwischen fallen dicke Wend. Das Lied gesungen mit ner Ganes in die Hand. Da sag nie keinmal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg. Hat Himmel bleien verstellen bläue Tag. Kommen weht noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Se weht beugt von unser Trott, mir seinen da. Kommen weht noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Se weht beugt von unser Trott, mir seinen da.
Thank you, Joel, for your meaningful words. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Samantha Abramson, Executive Director of the Nathan and Esther Peltz Holocaust Education Resource Center. I want to thank each of you for joining us today, especially our survivors, who I'm grateful to consider my friends and my inspiration. We need your wisdom, testimonies, and affirmations of truth now more than ever. And we all feel the mantle of responsibility in this room to continue your legacy and that you have bravely and fiercely started for us. I'm also grateful to the sponsors listed in your program who make this commemoration possible every year. I thank the leadership of our planning committee, including our committee co-chairs, Leo Kleiner and Felicia Miller, the professional teams of HERC, the Milwaukee Jewish Federation, and the JCC, especially Michael Morris and Reva Fox. In a few weeks, on April 28th, we will celebrate the 5th anniversary of the signing of Wisconsin Act 30, the statewide mandate that requires education on the Holocaust and other genocides in middle and high schools across our state. We are grateful to the bipartisan team of lawmakers, community leaders, and advocates, including Senator Jody Haber-Sinekin, who is with us today, and survivor families who made Holocaust education a priority for our state and trusted HERC to lead the implementation of this mandate. HERC has partnered with nearly 400 school districts and served over 260,000 students since 2021. The world looks a little different today than it did 5 years ago. We are living in a time of unprecedented Holocaust denial, distortion, and manipulation. A time when anti-Semitism, especially post-October 7th, is rampant and unchecked in our society. In these difficult times, Wisconsin continues to be a beacon of hope as the #1 ranked state in Holocaust awareness. We did that together. Because of this community's investment in Holocaust education, our state's teachers and students are equipped with the resources and the support they will need not only to remember the Holocaust, but to learn about its root cause, anti-Semitism. What we do every day matters. Before I introduce today's speaker, I need to tell you a short story. The year was 2010, and I was a recent transplant living in Washington, D.C., trying to get through my first high holiday season. It was not going well. I was confused and lost. I didn't know where to go. And I very famously spent my first Rosh Hashanah running out of a synagogue where I didn't feel welcome, and I fled to the National Zoo and spent my first Rosh Hashanah with a panda bear and an apple. I confessed my experience to a professor who suggested I check out this place called 6th and I Historic Synagogue. I walked in for the first time. It was a Shabbat service. And for the next decade, I never felt alone in Washington again. That is the power of Jewish communal life and the environment that today's keynote speaker, Esther Safran Foer, created when she became the founding executive director of 6th and I Historic Synagogue, an organization rooted in creating Jewish community for those in their 20s and 30s. As she did for thousands of others, Esther helped me live the Jewish life that I wanted during formative years of my journey. 3 years after my first, let's face it, lonely high holidays, at 6th and I's request, I led a walking tour of Jewish sites in historic downtown on Yom Kippur. And wouldn't you know it, I met my future husband on that tour. My story is not unique. Thousands of Jewish professionals can trace their friendships and relationships back to 6th and I Historic Synagogue. You need to know that story before you join me in bearing witness to Esther's testimony today. The story is difficult to hear. You need to know who Esther is. Through her career and life, Esther Safran Foer has been a champion of Jewish joy, arts, culture, believing strongly in the need to build opportunities for Jewish engagement among young people through experimental, creative, and inclusive pathways. Born to Holocaust survivor parents in Poland in 1946, Esther moved to the United States as a refugee at age 3. Early in her career, she served as press secretary for George McGovern in his 1972 presidential campaign and spent many years running a PR firm in D.C. Esther has held many leadership roles within the Jewish community, including, of course, as founding director of 6th and I, also as chair of the Capitol Jewish Museum during its founding years, and was its immediate past chair in the aftermath of the fatal shooting outside that museum last June. With her husband, Bert, Esther has 3 sons, Franklin Foer, Joshua Foer, and Jonathan Safran Foer, all of whom are prominent writers you've likely read, and I believe Jonathan has been here before. Her sons played active roles in helping her research her 2020 memoir, I Want You to Know We're Still Here, which documents Esther's journey to uncover her family's Holocaust story. Through her actions and strength, Esther shows us the meaning of both Holocaust memory and Jewish resilience, and above all, a commitment to ensuring that the Jewish people not only survive, but thrive. I am honored to invite my friend Esther on stage.
Probably stop right now. Thank you, Samantha. That was lovely. And I'm delighted to be here in Milwaukee. Let's see. So, my birth certificate says that I was born on September 8th, 1946, in Ziegenheim, Germany. I wasn't. 2 dates, 2 places, 2 of the many lingering unanswered questions of my life. And it would take me years to understand why. Only recently have I begun to make sense of those falsified documents and to understand more about my family's story, which I want to share with you today. The Nazi project was not only to kill Jews, it was to erase us, to leave no trace. Victims were buried in unmarked mass graves because erasure was the point. My family's story, our survival, and the survival of our memory is a form of resilience against erasure. Today, I want to tell you how that resistance was passed down, what it cost, and what it produced. Both of my parents, Ethel Bronstein and Louis Safran, were Holocaust survivors. Their entire large extended families were murdered in shtetls. And I don't say killed, I have to say murdered. These people were murdered, they weren't just killed. They were killed in what was Poland and is now Western Ukraine. They weren't killed in concentration camps. They were murdered one by one, bullet by bullet, by Einsatzgruppen, the Nazi death squads, and their local collaborators, who were responsible for the killing of at least 1.5 million Jews this way. And I have to add that after a while, the Nazis realized it wasn't efficient to do it this way, one bullet, one person, and moved more aggressively to the concentration camps. The victims of what is called the Holocaust by bullet lie in thousands of mass graves scattered across Eastern Europe, many still unmarked. In my mother's shtetl, Kolki, one of the first persons killed was my great-grandfather, Josef Weinberg. He went to the synagogue on Shabbat morning. The Nazis bolted the door and set the wooden synagogue on fire, killing my great-grandfather Josef and everyone else inside. I'm named for my two murdered grandmothers, Esther and Bracha. My brother is named for our murdered grandfathers, Israel and Joseph. We had no grandparents, no aunts, no uncles, no cousins, but we had their names. In Jewish tradition, naming a child for someone who's been killed is not sentiment. It's an act of memory. It's a declaration that the dead are not entirely gone, that their memory lives on in the ones who carry their names forward. From the very beginning, my parents understood that memory was the only form of survival still available to them. My mother survived the war on the run. She was a teenager. She ran through Russia deep into Asia. My father, we believe, was hiding in Poland. They met in 1944 when their part of Poland was liberated. And they were married in Lodz, Poland, May 1st, 1945, 7 days before the Germans surrendered. I recently found their ketubah in a pile of papers that my mother saved, their Jewish wedding contract. With a little research, I realized that the date of their wedding, May 1st, was Lag BaOmer, a minor Jewish holiday, but important because it's the day in the midst of a period of mourning between Passover and Shavuot when celebrations, when weddings were permitted. I thought about how many Jewish couples, despite everything they had been through, waited for that one day. Think about what that choice meant. To wait for that one permitted day, to have a ketubah, a document, a record, something that could be held. My parents had just emerged from a world designed to leave no trace, no record, no proof that Jews had ever lived. And one of their first acts in the aftermath was to create this document. And 10 months later, they created a new Jewish life, me. But we were still refugees in Poland. I was a baby refugee. There was no home for my parents to go back to, and there was no way out of the graveyard of Europe. No country in the world wanted Jewish refugees, no country. The Iron Curtain was descending, borders in Europe were closing. When I was 6 months old, my family was smuggled across the border from Poland into Germany in a truck with a false bottom. My mother had to put a cloth in my mouth so I wouldn't make any noise on the most dangerous parts of the journey. We ended up in a displaced persons camp in the American zone of Germany. Our first home was a former prisoner of war camp in Ziegenheim. Some DP camps were even created in former concentration camps. They had to be set up so quickly. Ziegenheim is the backdrop of my earliest memories, or perhaps they feel like memories because I have photographs. Pictures where I look happy and loved, and I surely was. But now, looking more closely at those pictures of me on a tricycle or in my oversized white rabbit coat, mugging for the camera, I see in the background rundown barracks, watchtowers, barbed wire fences. I learned as an adult researching my book that the DP camps had to be opened so quickly they were filthy. And in more than a few cases, there was an outright contempt for Jewish refugees. In the beginning, refugees in some of these camps were being given even less food than the German prisoners of war received. We slept in unheated barracks on army cots. At first, there were no cribs. After 2 years, our tiny little family was finally given permission to come to the United States under the U.S. Displaced Persons Immigration Act of 1948, an act that was blatantly anti-Semitic. The act limited immigration to refugees who had arrived in Germany by December of 1945, a condition almost impossible for most Jewish survivors who had survived by going east. They had not had enough time to go west, and Congress knew exactly what it was doing when it set that date. So this is why I have a falsified birth certificate, but don't tell anybody. I was born on March 17th, 1946, on Purim, although I'm named for my grandmother, Esther, in a hospital in Lodz, Poland. The date and place were changed so that my parents could qualify to come to America. This act, which was set up to allow 200,000 Eastern European displaced persons to come to the U.S., only about 50,000 Jews came in under this act because of its anti-Semitic requirements. And it's been said that roughly 10,000 Nazis were able to enter the U.S. under this same act. My mother's Brazilian uncle Solomon, we first wanted to go to Brazil, which also didn't want us. He wrote to her a few months after we arrived in the U.S., and this is a quote from him from 1949. "I'm very, very happy that you have finally found a place to end your wandering. But there's also anti-Semitism in the beautiful, good land of America." Rather poignant to have heard that in 1949. My mother only sparingly and often very reluctantly would share stories, occasional stories about her family's life in the shtetl and about their ultimate fate. My father's story was a blank slate. He committed suicide when I was 8 and my brother was 4. While he somehow walked out of Europe alive after the war, ultimately he couldn't survive the peace, something I'll probably never understand. My father's silence and then his absence taught me something I would only understand much later. Trauma without memory, without narrative, without names and stories to hold on to has nowhere to go. It becomes a weight that crushes a person. Memory's not only about honoring the dead, it's making it possible for the living to survive. Then one day, as my mother did when she recounts stories to me, when I was already the mother of 3 sons, she casually mentioned in the midst of another story that my father had had a wife and daughter who were killed in the Holocaust. I mean, I couldn't believe she was telling me this at this point in my life. It landed on me like a physical weight. When I pressed her for more, she pushed me aside, as she would do when she didn't want to say more. For my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, I had names. I had stories. I even had a few precious pictures. For my own sister, I had nothing. No name, nothing concrete, nothing to hold on to, no record that she ever lived, no memory to pass on. Without a name, she was not just killed, she was erased. I'd grown up understanding in my bones that remembering is the one thing the living can still do for the dead. I couldn't let go of this. Over the years, I sought out bits of information everywhere I went. Pieces of my father's story started to come together. In Israel, I found an old woman who had known my father during the war, before the war, and she lived in the same shtetl. She knew his wife and told me her name was Zipporah. She knew exactly where they lived. She shared a few precious stories, but she couldn't remember a child. And she said, there were so many babies. How can we remember all of them? So I learned about a young woman named Anna in Ukraine. I actually went to Ukraine and met a lot of people, and they were all named Anna, but that's another story. And this Anna had worked as a guide for a friend of mine who'd gone back to Ukraine to trace his roots. I sent Anna a copy of a photograph that I had, that my mother had given me, of my father with the family that she thought had hidden him during the war. And I gave her the correct name of the shtetl where he'd lived, which I also learned from this woman in Israel. Anna went to the village. She passed around the photograph of my father. Almost immediately, somebody recognized my father, label, and said, oh, and he was hiding in David's house. And then she told Anna the rescuer's grandson still lives in the village. Anna went to the house where the grandson lived, and there were still old photographs hanging. She photographed the photographs and emailed them to me. She thought there was enough similarity that she'd found a match. I wasn't convinced. I'm a skeptic. So I hired an FBI photographic forensic expert. Yes, these people do exist. And by the way, they cost $250 an hour in 2009. We spent an hour together comparing photographs Anna had emailed me from Ukraine with the one that I had. We used a crosshair magnifier measuring and comparing features. And then at the end of the hour, he said, I can't tell you that it's the same people. And seeing how disappointed I was, he said, but I also can't tell you it's not them. What he gave me were clues of what to look for when I went to Ukraine myself, including looking at the clothes that people wore. These weren't people with extensive wardrobes, and they were likely to wear the same clothes when they were photographed. In August 2009, my oldest son, Frank, and I made the trip to Ukraine. By the way, I'll take an aside here. My mother said, you can't go, you can't do this to me. And I said, I'm going with my son. You know, Frank will be there. She said, you're taking your son? He has babies. She was reliving the Holocaust in my trip. But of course, she knew me. She had a lot of strength, and so did I, and she knew I was going to go. I tried to manage my expectations. I convinced myself it would be enough to walk the streets and breathe the air of the shtetls where my parents and grandparents had lived, and that I was unlikely to find anything definitive. Anna, my guide, and her father, our driver, met us at the airport in Lviv. Frank immediately asked her whether she really thought she had found the right family. She said she felt 90% confident. And Frank said, well, why 90%? And she said, because the rest is up to you. A few days later, we drove nervously to the village. While only one grandson still lived there, 5 members of the family had traveled to meet us, which was no small thing. They had to travel by bus, which was a 4-hour walk away from the house. They stood outside as we drove up. My heart, as you can imagine, was pounding. We looked at each other, and then my emotions got the best of me, and I went up and embraced them. They took us behind the house to the field to give us a sense of what it looked like before the war. There was one pear tree in the field that said that was the one tree that survived since the war. I immediately pulled out a Ziploc bag and started collecting leaves from the tree. In my mind, my father and my sister had probably eaten pears from this tree. I was collecting memories. I'm sure Frank was totally embarrassed, and I can't imagine what the Ukrainians were thinking, but I just didn't care. We went inside the wooden house, where there was still no indoor plumbing in 2009. Photographs of generations of the family lined the front room. Nadia, now the family matriarch, pointed out that her father always wore an unusual shirt with a high collar and 2 buttons on top, a shirt that his wife had made for him. That was the shirt in my photograph. I leaned over to Frank. I said, "This can't be real." He said, 110%. While we were telling stories and poring over pictures, an old woman who lived down the road wandered in. They just wander in and out of each other's houses. She got right into the conversation. She picked up my picture and instantly identified Label, my father. She looked at Frank, my son, and she said, "You have your grandfather's eyebrows." She remembered details of when Label came out of hiding after the war. She remembered that his wife's name was Zipporah. I was just breathless, but Frank worked up the courage to ask her whether she remembered that Label and Zipporah had a child. Without hesitation, she said, "Of course, I played with her." But she wasn't a baby. She was 5 or 6 years old. She had long black hair, and she liked to play with a ball. Then she looked at me and said, "Your sister's name was Asya." 67 years after her death, I confirmed that my sister had existed. I knew her name. The Nazis tried to erase her. They failed. Because one woman in a Ukrainian village remembered a little girl with long black hair who liked to play with a ball. Because I refused to stop asking. Because Frank was willing to make the trip with me. Because memory, it turns out, is one of the most important and resilient things that humans possess, if we're willing to fight for it. I've added Asya's name along with her mother Zipporah's name to the Yad Vashem database. The leaves from the pear tree sit in a jar on my mantle. And the obligation I feel to remember, to refuse erasure, to pass the names forward continues. We are here today because we share that obligation. Every name we speak out loud, every story we refuse to let disappear, every child we name for someone who was taken. These aren't only acts of grief, they're acts of defiance. They are how we fight back against the erasure that was always the true aim of the genocide. When we came back, shortly after my 6th grandchild, my 3rd granddaughter was born. Her name is B. Esther Foer. Thank you.
Thank you for those beautiful memories. Ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, be'emunah shelema, המשיח, בביאת המשיח אני מאמין, ואף על פי שיתממע, עם כל זה אני מאמין. אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין. באמונה שלמה, בביאת המשיח, בביאת המשיח אני מאמין, ואף על פי שיתממע, עם כל זה אני מאמין.
Before I start, Esther, on behalf of our community and the Milwaukee Jewish Federation Board and my partner, Judy Korn, I just want to say thank you. I am so moved, I almost ran over Canterbarish to get up here, because I was thinking about the theme of being the stories we carry, and your book being, I want you to know that I'm still here. And I think that's so much about Yom HaShoah here in Milwaukee, that it's not just mourning who we lost, but it's what came after and what we have built the generations after. But I'm going to change my opening because of your talk, which is, my name is Miriam Yocheved Rivka Rosenzweig. A lot of people died in the Holocaust, and my family, both my grandmothers, Miriam and Rivka, great-grandmothers. I'm the grandchild of two Holocaust survivors, Yaakov and Helen Rosenzweig, who met at a displaced persons camp where my father was born. But today I want to mention my grandfather's first family. I'm getting verklempt. His wife Hinda and his 3 children, Mendel, Herschel, and Beryl, who were 10, 7, and 3, and were murdered in Treblinka. And I always lived with this notion of what did it mean that he lost his family, and here we are. And I think this Yom HaShoah is, I want you to know that we're still here, and it's what we build and who we are. So thank you for bringing that to us. In that spirit, Yom HaShoah here, we have always brought in and invited our interfaith partners, not as a token gesture, but as a moment to remind us that we are here and we're not alone. This year, I want to say, we need to remember that. And we need to remember that there's a lot of noise and there's real hate out there. And we have real friends and allies and live at a time where we're not alone and don't have the experience of those days. I have the honor of introducing the Most Reverend Archbishop Jeffrey Grobe. Just over a year ago, he was named as the Archbishop in Milwaukee, and I want you to know that within his first year, he made it a priority to meet with our community. He made it a priority to get to know us, to understand what is happening, what is the experience, and offer not platitudes, but partnership and allyship. Archbishop Grobe was born in Wisconsin to a dairy farming family, and he brings to his role not only deep faith, but a grounded understanding of community and responsibility. His commitment has been shown not only in his work, but in the Catholic community, and we've seen great partnerships. Where is Liran? Liran over there, and the work that he's been doing with the Lux Center at Sacred Heart University, the work that the JCRC has been doing with the Catholic Jewish Alliance, and the different work that we're bringing together to advance Holocaust education and meaning together. It's at times like these that we need to remember our friends and our partners and that we're not alone. Archbishop, we are thankful for your leadership, your friendship, and your partnership. Please join me in welcoming Archbishop Rowe.
Good afternoon, everyone. After an introduction like that, I'm sure anyway, you're very kind. Needless to say, my heart is filled with gratitude as I stand before you this afternoon. I'm a guest. Thank you. And having a speaking role in this sacred assembly is, to say the very least, an incredible privilege and an honor. And all I can do is say thank you. In reflecting on how I might use my voice during this time of remembering, this time of honoring, I realized that I want my voice to be the hand that reaches out as to one's neighbor in friendship, in solidarity, in the face of a gloom, an insidious darkness that once was permitted to be unleashed on the world and on a people, and in ways still refuses to subside. That's our reality. We name it because in some ways it gives us power over it. It doesn't have a right to exist. And so in light of that, and in response to a question that was put to me, namely, what is the Catholic community's role in Holocaust education, permit me two texts that gave form to my response. The first is taken from Christian scriptures, the first letter to the church in Corinth, chapter 12. The other from the author Parker Palmer and his work, The Active Life, a Spirituality of Work, Creativity, and Caring, in which he describes a life-altering moment and a remarkable experience in his life. Let's be clear. The first is an attitude, and the second is an action. At least, this is how I want to respond. First, the scripture. We read in verses 20 and 25 to 26 of the 12th chapter of 1 Corinthians. But as it is, there are many parts, yet one body. And the parts are to have the same concern for one another. If one part suffers, all the parts suffer with it. If one part is honored, all the parts share its joy. Now for Parker Palmer. He writes, twice in my life I've experienced deep depression. Both times, various friends tried to rescue me with well-intended encouragement and advice. In the midst of my depression, I had a friend who took a different approach. Every afternoon, around 4 o'clock, he came to me, sat me in a chair, removed my shoes, and massaged my feet. He hardly said a word, but he was there. He was with me. He was a lifeline to me a link to the human community, and thus to my own humanity. He had no need to fix me. He knew the meaning of compassion. Now more than ever, communities, traditions of faith must stand together to push back against the encircling gloom that craftily tricks us into believing that it is more powerful than what people of truth and goodwill can accomplish when they're unified, when they stand as one, when they will not be compromised. We must never grow weary. We must always remain vigilant. We must never lose sight of the human dignity of each and every person, male and female alike, created in the divine image. Therefore, in this light, it is necessary that communities of Catholic believers, those are the folks I can speak for, at least in the 10 counties that comprise the Archdiocese of Milwaukee, but it is necessary that communities of Catholic believers concretely take up the task of instructing its members, along with anyone else who will listen, in the deeper understanding of the unspeakable horrors of the Holocaust. And by doing so, work together that such a history may never be permitted to be created again. We cannot allow each other to stand alone. We cannot allow each other to suffer alone. For in fact, we all comprise one body of humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Archbishop Grab, for your meaningful words and for your friendship to our Jewish community. We are truly blessed by your presence here today and appreciate all of your efforts in our greater community on our behalf. It is now my honor to invite my friend, State Senator Jody Habush-Sinekin, to announce the winners of this year's Holocaust Writing and Art Contest. We are grateful to the Mimi and Robert Habush Donor Advised Fund and the Habush family for their longtime sponsorship of this statewide contest for middle and high school students. Jody?
Thank you, everyone. If I could have Rumi and Matthew come up, join me on the podium. Thank you. And I'm just wondering, is Chloe Dahl here by any chance? I know it was a long drive as well. Okay, it's worth an ask. Thank you. Thank you. Take it on this side. Thank you. Thank you. This is perfect. Thank you. I see many familiar faces year after year. The Holocaust Writing and Art Contest represents an inspiring, ever-growing endeavor that reaches out to young people all across Wisconsin in an effort to enhance their understanding of the Holocaust and our Jewish people. Sponsored by the Mimi and Robert Habush Donor Advised Fund, the contest is spearheaded by a partnership between the Nathan and Esther Peltz Holocaust Education Resource Center and the Harry and Rose Samson Family Jewish Community Center. Personally speaking, as someone who has been involved in this youth contest for over 30 years now, I have never experienced a time where efforts like this one to educate and create youth allies is more important. I recognize in my still new role as a state senator that my own Jewish journey continues to evolve. and be informed by the ever-changing, increasingly worrisome world around me here in Wisconsin and beyond. I feel fortunate that today's commemoration, Yom HaShoah, has always been and remains an important touch point for me each year, a time for reflection and connection with all of you. This year's 2026 Holocaust Writing and Art Contest brought in 229 entries from 21 schools, representing 17 cities across Wisconsin, demonstrating a remarkable expansion of the contest touchpoints statewide and a testament to the dedicated efforts of HERC and its Education Committee's outreach efforts, for which I feel truly grateful. This year's 4 contest winners, and I really appreciate the 2 of you being here. Some had a short drive, others had a 2+ hour drive, and it's really important, and I hope that you all appreciate it as I do. They had to answer the following prompt, which I can attest to takes a long time through consensus to develop, and it is this: create a written or artistic piece that brings to life the story of a person affected by the Holocaust, showing their humanity, dreams, and identity beyond the numbers. And they certainly met that charge. As always, the contest selections were determined through an entirely anonymous process, and all 4 of the first-place finalists are to receive an all-expense paid trip to the Washington, D.C. Holocaust Museum, with each of their respective teachers awarded a $100 gift certificate as well. The first-place finalist of this year's contest in the art category was Mackenzie Milikowski. I'm glad they have it behind us. Please take a look at that. Mackenzie created, she's a 12th grade student, first of all, at DeForest Area High School. I was just in DeForest last week on Thursday, so I know where that is, and I have a feel for what that community looks like. So it's remarkable that she and her school participated. But she submitted this watercolor painting, which she entitled, as you see here, More Than Survivors, which features Mackenzie's own great-grandparents who survived the Holocaust. In her artist statement, Mackenzie reflects, they are just 2 of the millions of people affected by the Holocaust, and each person affected had a different story, families, and their own lives. And it is beautiful. The second-place finalist in the art category is Matthew Nicolaisen, and he is right here with me. He is an 8th grade student attending Cromery Middle School in Middleton. And Matthew shared in his artist statement that his main inspiration was how, when people hear the sheer numbers of those killed in the Holocaust, most folks rarely picture people's faces. So he created a collage of many prisoners' faces into a singular person. In his words, to help us imagine that people who are only known as numbers today are human like us and deserve to be recognized. Now that is an aspiration we need more of in today's world, from the mouth of babes. Seriously. I did want to add that Matthew is accompanied by his teacher, Dr. Irene Rosenli. Could she stand, please? Oh, you're just waving. Very good. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you. As you all know, the work of teachers is really what is moving this project forward. So we have here the students, but think of all those other students who are being educated and inspired as well. So moving on to the writing category, we have here with us today also Rumi Kok. She's an 8th grade student attending Shorewood Intermediate School, and she earned the first place in the writing category. Rumi focused her brilliant essay on the experiences of Holocaust survivor Estelle Laughlin, born in Warsaw, Poland in 1929. And I have heard from many here that this is one of the most brilliant essays ever submitted. You heard that for yourself. And it is so outstanding. It's amazing. It really is. And I really encourage all of you to take some time in the coming days to go on the Herc's website. It's really easy, and just read the essay. Look at the other artist statements in their entirety. It's absolutely worth it. But it's quite long, but I did pick out the ending paragraph just to give you a feel for her thoughtfulness. And you asked me to read it. You had a little bit of, I understand it's a little bit scary in front of this room, but this is what she wrote. Rumi wrote, "Where does all of this leave us? Learning about the stories of survivors like Estelle and this depth can change our future. It gives perspective and context, but it really reminds me of the word Sonder. Sonder was popularized by the project Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, described as, quote, the realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own, full of ambitions, routines, relationships, worries, and memories you'll never know about. Learning about Estelle's story can hopefully help you bring yourself to this realization, the realization that her life was just as deep and complex as yours or mine. As well, through learning about others, we can learn a lot about ourselves. We can all hope that we never have to experience genocide like this in our lifetime, but hatred and malice still exist everywhere. With the lessons we learn through the stories of survivors, we gain so many more tools to help abolish this hate and help cultivate love and acceptance." Thank you. And lastly, and now you know why I called out to her, we have Chloe Dowell's poem. She submitted it, and again, read it in its entirety, please. "I Am the Rain" is the second winning entry. It is a beautiful and moving poem personifying rain, as if it were watching over the victims of the Holocaust. Chloe's poem moved me greatly. I read it over and over. I read it to Dan. I will not be able to do it the justice that she herself can do, but just if you could allow me to read this, at least the first few stanzas of it to you. "I am the rain, trembling over the barbed wire and chimneys that never stop breathing. I slip through the cracks of crowded train cars, through splintered wood and broken hope. I land on skin marked with numbers like people could be reduced to ink. I am the rain, pounding the roofs at night, muffling the sounds of pain and suffering. I fall on mothers, holding on to their children oh so tight, like if they squeeze hard enough, the world wouldn't take them. I fall on fathers, trying to conceal their fear, even though the dread sits in their throat. I sink into the ground, carrying away the blood of the innocent, like maybe I can erase what should have never happened. I run through the dirt that should have grown flowers, but only learned how to hold bodies." And it does continue, and it is that powerful. So I thank all of you and the people who volunteer to make this contest as vibrant and evolving as it is. And I thank these young people who literally contributed their time and their talent to uplift all of us today. So thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator, and thank you to our young people who, through their artistry, raise up the divine image in all those who perished. I think it would be meaningful to read the English of El Malay for the Shoah before reading it in the Hebrew. God, who is full of mercy and dwells on high, provided true rest on the wings of the divine presence amongst the holy and pure ones who shine as brightly as the brilliance of the sky amid the ranks of the holy and the pure, illuminating like the brilliance of the skies the souls of our beloved who perished in the Shoah, men, women, and children who were slaughtered, suffocated, and burned to ashes. May you, who are the source of mercy, shelter them beneath your wings eternally and bind their souls among the living, that they may rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Please rise as you are able. El Malay Rachamim, Shochen Mamromim, Hamse Nechona, Tachat Kanfer Shchina, Bema'alot Kirushim Utohorim, Kizohar Harakim Mazirim, L'nishmot kol acheinu b'nei Yisrael, shenitbechu b'Shoah, anashim nashim v'taf, shenechneku, v'shenisrefu, v'shenehergu, shemasru et nafsham al kiddush Hashem, Began Eden tehem menuchatam, Anabal rachamim hastireim beseter kenafecha l'olamim, utzror bitzor chaim et nishmotehem, Adonai hu nachalatam, v'yanuchu b'shalom al mishkevotehem, V'nomar, Amen.
Yishar Koach, Rabbi Noah. As I lead us in offering Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish, let's remember that we are mourning not only those who perished in the Holocaust, but also on this Yom HaShoah v'Hagvura, on this day of destruction and of heroism, that we are remembering too the many survivors, like your father, Esther, who survived the war but are no longer with us. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, ba'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, b'galau v'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehi Shemei Rabbah mvorach l'olam ha'omeh Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnasei, V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yit'halal shemei dekudesha brichu, le'ila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiran be'alma v'meru Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'meru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mamav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'meru Amen.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
You can sit. My name is Noah Gerasi. I am Milwaukee Jewish Federation and Jewish Agency Community Shlicha. I am a third-generation descendant of Holocaust survivors, my grandfather Moshe, of blessed memory, and my grandmother Eva, may she live a long life. It is a privilege to participate in this meaningful and important event. The central theme of Holocaust Remembrance Day in Israel this year is the Jewish family in the Holocaust. Today, I would like to share with you a unique chapter in Israeli history, one that focuses on the longing for family in the years after the Holocaust. When the war ended and the camps were liberated, lists began circulating through Europe. Handwritten lists. Who has seen? Who was encountered? Who can provide information about the fate of? These lists were copied and sent from city to city, from country to country, to and from the land of Israel and back to Europe. Soldiers of the Jewish Brigade carried small notes with them, names, fragments of information. In every note, an entire world. A person searching for a brother, a mother searching for a daughter, a child searching for a parent. One of the very first things survivors did after liberation, exhausted, starving, often ill, was to go in search of their families. This was their strongest inner drive, to hold on to the most basic form of belonging. So many people did not know whether their loved ones were alive or dead. In the land of Israel, at the end of 1945, the Jewish Agency for Israel established a new department, the Search for Relatives Bureau, Hamador Lechipush Krovim. Its staff gathered information about survivors and about relatives who disappeared during the war. Alongside investigative and tracing effort, a unique radio program was launched, dedicated entirely to reading out names. A sacred 15 minutes in every home. Everything stopped. Everyone listened with reverence. An endless stream of names. In this way, Holocaust consciousness entered the Israeli living room, into lunchtime meals, into the soundtrack of childhood. Every neighbor knew whom the woman next door was searching for, who was missing from which family. In those moments, the Holocaust was not history. It was a living reality shaping the fabric of daily life long afterward. Everyone searched. Everyone listened to the one and only radio station. Everyone carried the phantom pains of the Holocaust. In those early years, many survivors remained silent. They did not speak of the trauma they had endured, but the radio spoke loudly. Israeli journalist Izzy Mann recounts that his grandfather and father would eat lunch together while listening to the program. They did not expect to hear any names. They were certain their family had perished. And suddenly, a familiar name. On the radio, they heard that his grandmother's brother was searching for his grandfather. As in the stories, the fork fell from his hand. 7 years after the war, a man found his brother-in-law. A family was reunited. Alka Grichovin, originally from Lodz, was working as a cleaner in Ashkelon in 1954. She was alone in the world. Her husband and 2 sons had been murdered in the camps. Her daughter has been taken and never returned. Elka wrote to the Search for Relatives Bureau, but she was afraid to hope. How many times can a heart break? One day, a letter arrived. A woman named Rosenthal was searching for her mother, and suddenly the name Grichovin caught her eye. The letter contained a detailed description of Elka's family, details only her daughter could know. 14 years after the Nazis burst into their living room, Elka and her daughter Sarah were reunited in Moshav Chatzav in Israel. Elka discovered she was a grandmother to 3 grandchildren. During 1946 and 47, more than 15,000 inquiries were received every month, about 50 each day. Every single day, investigators reached out to the Red Cross, to governments, to organizations across Europe. Approximately 30,000 survivors living in Israel reunited with their relatives. Around 60,000 survivors in Europe established contact with relatives who had immigrated to Israel. For every joyful reunion, there were 8 or 9 who searched and never found, who lived with vast emptiness, with unanswered questions, with longing that never healed. And to this day, the iconic phrase that accompanied the radio program, Kol Adam Hayodea Davar al Mekom Himatz'o, anyone with information regarding his or her whereabouts is requested to come forward, remains etched in the collective memory, even among those born many years later. Tonight, here in Milwaukee, we are part of another chapter in the story of the Jewish family, a community that lives, breathes, and builds a future. Memory teaches us something profound. Family is not to be taken for granted. Connection is not to be taken for granted. On this day of remembrance, we honor not only those who were murdered, we also honor the longing, the searching, the names that were read aloud, and the stubborn, unimaginable hope to find home again. May their memory be a blessing. I want to invite Eitan Ben Zeev, our Shinshin, to join me for Hatikva, and I want to invite all of you to stand with us and join us. כל עוד בלבב בנימה נפש יהודי הומיה ולפתי מזרח קדימה עין לציון צופיה עוד לא אבדה תקוותנו התקווה בת שנות 2000 להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו
ארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים.
The strains of Hatikva, the hope, remind us that even as we mourn and remember, we have hope. Thank you all for being here today. We are honored that you have joined us for this year's Yom HaShoah commemoration and honored that you have helped us all to bear witness to the stories we carry. On behalf of the Yom HaShoah Committee, HERC, the Milwaukee Jewish Federation, and the JCC, I want to thank all of you who participated in today's Yom HaShoah commemoration, and a special thank you to our featured speaker, Esther Safran Foer, and again to all of the volunteers, participants, staff, and generous sponsors who made today's event possible.
As you exit into the Surlo hallway, we invite you to add a message on a leaf and place it on the tree. This tree is an interactive art piece, and many leaves already placed on the tree were created by students of the Milwaukee Jewish Day School. Every leaf added is a sign that the Milwaukee Jewish community stands together to remember the Holocaust. We look forward to being together again at the JCC on Monday, April 20th at 6:30 p.m. for the Yom HaZikaron commemoration, and then on Sunday, April 26th at 2 p.m. for Yom HaAtzmaut and the Walk for Israel. May the memories of the righteous always be for a blessing. Thank you.